Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
With Cuomo announcing his resignation the day after his top aide resigned, NTD's Jason Perry asked the former chairman of the California Democratic Party why he thinks the governor resigned and what will happen next.
We asked Bill Press why Governor Cuomo would resign, while at the same time continue denying the significant allegations.
I think he resigned because I think he knew his time was up, and there was no way he could survive. I mean, these are very serious charges, and he was all alone in the world. By the way, I think he did the right thing. Often, politicians don't do the right thing, and then we attack them for it. I do think we should say, okay, Governor, what you did was wrong, but by resigning, that was the right thing to do. Good for the people of New York, good for the country, and good for the Democratic Party.
He also thinks Cuomo's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, did the right thing by stepping down as well. Her name was mentioned in the sexual harassment report 187 times.
I think, number one, she knew the governor could not survive, so she didn't want to go down with the sinking ship, if you will, even though it was only 24 hours earlier. But the other thing is she was named over 170 times herself in the report. And remember, this is not over. There is still a criminal investigation.
Bill Press explained the impact that this will have on the Cuomo family name.
You have to say that at least for 2 terms, Andrew Cuomo did a pretty good job running the state, and the people thought so. They elected him to a 3rd term. I would think the people of New York will still always cherish the Cuomo name, but there will be an asterisk there forever, a little black cloud forever over the Cuomo name because of Andrew Cuomo. It will not destroy the Cuomo reputation, but it definitely tarnishes it.
Bill Press also mentioned that he's happy to see Kathy Hochul take over the job. And after that, we'll see who's running for governor in 2022, because New York has never had a lack of candidates. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Cuomo was the governor of New York for over a decade, getting reelected by the people of New York twice. NTD's Arian Pasdar went to the streets of New York City to find out how people feel about him now.
Throughout his career, Governor Cuomo always enjoyed great popularity with the people of New York. And his popularity peaked last year right before the scandal started, which was at the beginning of the pandemic when he won an Emmy Award for his daily press conferences. Now, of course, he had to resign. But what do the people think about him? Did they want to see him go, or do they still support him?
I think New York will take a great loss when we lose him. I had liked him a whole lot.
So he shouldn't have resigned?
No, he shouldn't have resigned. It's like they did Bill Cosby. These ladies looking for money and fame. I don't even agree with that.
He definitely felt a lot of pressure, and I think he should have stuck to his guns and waited it out. You know, that's what a lot of other people do, especially from the other party. So, sometimes you can't give in to the mob.
I think Cuomo handled COVID fairly well. I think he had a lot of challenges. I mean, this state was one of the hardest hit in the country, so I give him credit for that.
I know someone who passed away in a nursing home, unfortunately, due to COVID, because of Andrew Cuomo, actually. This has no place in our government. He cannot lie and then cover up making a book. Who writes a book in the middle of a pandemic that you're supposed to be handling thousands of lives? You can't do that. There's no place in New York for Andrew Cuomo.
Arian Pasdar, NTD News, New York.
The Texas House Saga continues. The state Supreme Court ruled on arresting the Democratic lawmakers who fled Texas last month to hinder a GOP-backed voting overhaul bill. They decided to overturn a lower court's order to block the arrest. This means the lawmakers could all face arrest once they return from the Capitol to the Lone Star State. The Texas Supreme Court's ruling came after Governor Greg Abbott and House Speaker Dade Phelan petitioned the court on Monday to overturn the protection order. They argued that the lower court's judge stopped them from exercising their constitutional authority to arrest and detain the lawmakers who broke quorum. Today, Abbott's office claimed victory, saying in a statement, the Supreme Court of Texas swiftly rejected this dangerous attempt by Texas Democrats to undermine our Constitution and avoid doing the job they were elected to do. Democrats, in response, said they would attempt to fight for a temporary injunction at the district court level. They have until Thursday to issue a court filing in response. And students in certain school districts in Florida and Texas will still have to wear masks when they return to school. That's despite a ban on mask mandates from the state's governors. NTD has more from both sides of the mask debate.
Public schools in Leon County, Florida, will be mandating face masks for students from pre-K to 8th grade this school year. That's after they asked Governor Ron DeSantis for flexibility on mask requirements.
And it was going to be my request that we start the school year temporarily with a mask requirement for students in pre-K through the 8th grade. And having not heard back from the governor, I needed to make a decision.
Alachua County and Lee County school districts have similar requirements. The Florida governor signed an executive order late last month banning schools from requiring face masks. Instead, parents get to decide whether their kids will wear masks to school.
What are the harmful effects of putting a kindergartner in a mask for 7 hours? Have they talked about the emotional, the academic, the physiological? Why isn't CDC studying that? They've had a lot of time to do it, but yet you don't do it.
DeSantis is fighting back against the school districts defying the executive order. On Monday, he recommended that Florida's education agency withhold the salary of the district superintendent or school board members that impose mask mandates. But school officials in Miami-Dade County and Alachua County are sticking by their decisions.
I'm not sure how legal it is, but our decision was made before the threat came down, and I still stand by the vote that I took on August 3rd.
And the state's second largest school district, Broward County, on Tuesday joined the list of non-compliant districts and imposed a mask mandate. But they are facing a lot of opposition from local parents.
We want to take masks off our children. That should be our choice. You choose to mask your children, fine. We choose to not mask our children. That should be our right as a parent.
And the conflict is not just in Florida. The Dallas Independent School District, the second largest in Texas, announced a mask requirement for all students and staff effective Tuesday. This in defiance of Governor Greg Abbott's ban on school mask mandates.
It's not about the governor. It's not personal, you know. I get along with him, and he's appointed me to a couple of commissions. We just happen to have a healthy disagreement on the perspective here.
Houston and Austin school districts are considering similar mask mandates. And it's not just schools. At least 2 district courts are requiring masks. So is the mayor of Houston. And the mayor of Austin is considering a vaccine requirement for city employees. The Texas governor hasn't yet said whether he will take action against local officials over their mandates. Other states and localities that recently implemented student mask requirements include Illinois, California, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Buncombe County in North Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina.
A college graduate from Indiana is teaching students how to apply for religious exemptions. She says this is to ensure others don't experience the same discrimination and segregation she dealt with. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
Some colleges and universities are putting up a fight. In states like Louisiana, Missouri, and Indiana, the law says students have the right to turn down vaccines on religious grounds. But this religious right has been denied for students like Kate Corrigan.
Religious exemptions are being denied left and right within our country.
Corrigan graduated from Earlham School of Religion in Indiana this year. She says the college told her she needed to show proof of COVID vaccination to attend her graduation. Corrigan says she's had a long-standing religious exemption for vaccines, but they turned it down anyway, initially.
It was accepted for all of the summer camps I've been to high school, then to the 4 years of my bachelor's degree, and then even to my master's program. And then all of a sudden, I received an email from the administration saying that they were requiring the COVID-19 vaccine to show proof of that, as well as proof of a negative COVID test to attend graduation. So I reminded them I have a long-standing religious exemption to vaccines, and they basically told me they weren't accepting it that round. So then they actually changed their policy after I reminded them of my long-standing religious exemption and my rights under Indiana state law. But I faced a lot of backlash. I was harassed threatened my professor, my academic advisor, threatened to have me removed from graduation. He then threatened to contact Boston University, which is a university I'll be attending this fall, and retract his letter of recommendation. I was removed from speaking at graduation. I then requested security because I continued to be harassed and threatened, and the president of my institution replied in an email, LOL.
We contacted several staff members at Earlham School of Religion, but we haven't heard back. Corrigan says she reached out to her district senator, the Indiana Attorney General, and filed complaints to 2 state agencies before the college walked back its vaccine mandate. Now she's holding religious exemption workshops to equip students with the knowledge and tools they need to opt out.
And what would you say to students who want to apply for a religious exemption but aren't confident enough or maybe just don't know how?
Definitely. I recommend you can check out my website, studentsagainstmandates.com. I have some information there on how to file a religious exemption. There's some resources where you can look up different scriptures. And in addition to that, you can sign up for one of my workshops. I will do my best to help you and offer some guidance and support in helping you form and craft your own religious exemption letter.
Corrigan started her workshops over a week ago. She says about 50 people have already gotten back to her saying their exemptions were approved. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
A special report on what's taking place inside California's female prisons. In September 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 132 into law, requiring prisons to house inmates based on their chosen gender identity. Now, biological men are sharing prison cells with terrified women, and one woman is reportedly pregnant. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
In California, biological male criminals are allowed to be housed in female prisons if they identify as women. Women's Liberation Front, or WOLF, a feminist organization which is in direct contact with inmates and staff, tells NTD that at least one woman in Central California Women's Facility is pregnant as a result of the male inmates. Because pregnancy is private health data, the reports cannot be verified with the prison.
Some of the men have been rounded up and put in segregation on the yard where the woman who is supposedly pregnant. So they've taken 3 of them and put them in administrative segregation.
Lauren Adams is Wolf's legal counsel. She says several weeks ago, the prison began giving out condoms and providing information about inmates' options if they get pregnant. At the time, Wolf called the new resources a tacit admission by officials that women should expect to be raped when housed in prison with men, where all sex is considered non-consensual by default within the system. Adams says she thinks many people picture someone like Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black when they think of transgender prisoners, but she says this is far from the truth. Many of the ones now housed in female prisons still look like men, and some, she said, are reportedly not taking their hormones, and one has grown a beard. And worse yet, Adams says some of the men that have been transferred into women's prisons are sex offenders.
One of the men who is in the yard where the pregnant woman is and who has been put in segregation is a sex offender. He has been convicted of multiple forcible rapes, but that's not what he's serving time for this time.
She says another male inmate housed in the California Institution for Women is serving time for molesting 2 children. As of April, around 250 biological male prisoners filed requests to transfer to women's prisons. So far, only about 20 transfers have been processed. None have been denied. Numerous women have written to Wolf saying they're terrified.
Having to use the toilet in front of men, having to shower in front of men. It's demoralizing and humiliating. We have religious women in there who, as part of their practice of their religion, rely on sex separation. And so on a daily 24-hour basis, they're being, that right's being infringed upon. It's really unreal.
She says the female inmates never got a say in the law, and even now, their calls for help go unheard. Adams says they feel forgotten.
They just feel like nobody cares about us, nobody cares about our safety, nobody cares about our feelings. 86% of incarcerated women have histories of sexual or physical abuse. Many have PTSD. The mental health options in there are very limited, and I don't know how you treat anxiety that's associated with literally being locked up with a sex offender. It's not like you can medicate that away or counsel it away.
In a July phone call to Wolf, one female inmate said prison guards told inmates they won't segregate the men from the women's cells because they're worried about getting sued.
And how do you think that we feel? We do not feel safe knowing you're scared of a lawsuit. We do not feel safe that you're going to put them in our room because you're afraid they'll claim discrimination, when all along the discrimination has been against us.
Adams said the situation cannot be blamed on the prisons since the policy was made law by California politicians. She said some of the legislators were trying to protect transgender individuals.
But, you know, the solution to men being victimized in men's prisons is not to change who the victims are. It's not to, instead of having male victims, now we have female victims.
Fundamentally, she says, women deserve to be housed in single-sex prisons.
We're not clownfish, we're not frogs. We are born how we're born, and that doesn't change no matter how much we see ourselves in a certain way. So I think that we need to remember that we're not housing identities, we're housing people.
She says for the most part, there's been silence over what's now taking place in the prisons. Likely, she says, because many people are afraid of taking a position and being called transphobic. Adams says the time has come for people to be brave and speak up. To read the letters from incarcerated women or sign the petition to halt the transfer of men into women's prisons, you can go to Women's Liberation Front's website. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
A Chinese court on Tuesday upheld a Canadian man's death sentence for drug smuggling. The court's decision comes as lawyers in Canada representing the chief financial officer of Huawei make a final push to prevent her from being extradited to the United States. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
A Chinese court on Tuesday upheld a Canadian man's death sentence for drug smuggling. Robert Schellenberg was arrested in 2014 and initially sentenced to 15 years in jail. He appealed, but a court in the city of Dalian sentenced him to death in January 2019. The timing of that decision is seen as critical, with some saying that it's linked to another case in Canada. A month before Schellenberg was given his death sentence in China, an executive of Chinese telecom giant Huawei was arrested in Vancouver on a warrant from the United States. Meng Wanzhou is accused of misleading HSBC about Huawei's business dealings in Iran, potentially causing the bank to violate American economic sanctions. This week, her lawyers are making a final push to prevent her extradition to the US. The Canadian ambassador to China, Dominic Barton, said it was no coincidence that the cases were happening at the same time. He also made reference to another Canadian, businessman Michael Spavor, who was detained in China days after Meng's arrest. Spavor was charged with espionage in June last year, and a court is due to announce a verdict on his case this week. China has rejected the suggestion the cases of the Canadians in China are linked to Meng's case in Canada. China has, however, warned of unspecified consequences if Meng is not released.